Welcome to Vintage SF. I'm Richard Rempel. Today we're looking at the 6th book in the Ace Science Fiction Specials Series 3, In the Drift, by Michael Swanwick, 1985. As with all the other books, this is a first novel for this writer. Terry Carr in his introduction says, Michael Swanwick's first novel has been eagerly awaited ever since he made his debut 5 years ago with a string of superior short stories and novelettes. In the Drift is based on his award-nominated story, Mummer Kiss, a longer version of which serves as the first part of the novel. The premise is that there has been a disastrous meltdown at a nuclear power station, yes, at 3 Mile Island, and the novel traces the chaos that would be caused for the people of the U.S. East Coast, and, indeed, for the entire country. Memorable characters are surprisingly rare in science fiction, but there are several here who come to life on the page, capturing the imagination as much as their well-realized future world does. One of them, Keith Petrovich, appears throughout the book, though he isn't always the viewpoint character. In a sense, In the Drift tells the story of his rise to power in a shattered world, but the novel goes far beyond that. Keith's saga is that of the entire future world in which he lives, and that is what In the Drift is about. It's a story of adventure and constant dangers as they're experienced by the remarkably real, and often very strange, characters. Michael Swanwick was born November 18, 1950. That means he's approaching his 74th birthday now. Swanwick's fiction started with short stories, the first of which was published in 1980. In the Drift was his first novel from 1985, and in 1987 he followed it up with Vacuum Flowers. In the 1990s, he moved towards the intersection between science fiction, fantasy, and magic realism. In 1991, Stations of the Tide won the Nebula for Best Novel. A number of his shorter works have been awarded as well. In the Drift isn't exactly an alternate history, it's actually an alternate future. It takes the partial meltdown in the nuclear plant at 3 Mile Island in 1979 and reimagines that it was a complete meltdown, contaminating the geography of the United States for hundreds of years, perhaps thousands. It has changed the landscape, and there are mutants and monsters. The Drift has fractured the eastern seaboard of the United States. There's the Commonwealth of Canada, Quebec, and Maritime Canada above the United States. We don't really see them in the novel. We do hear about them. Then there's the New York Holding and the Green State Alliance, including Boston. The Drift, the area most affected by nuclear fallout, is around Philadelphia. And then we have United States below. As you can see, to the west there is a disputed area. This is a fix-up novel of sorts. There are 2 main novellas that are weaved into a longer story. Some of the characters cross multiple stories. It reminds me of a conversation I had recently with Stephen E. Andrews about fix-up novels. Sometimes they're thematic or mosaic in their portrayal of a future. This is the path that Swanwick has taken with In the Drift. So we know the first part of this novel is basically the story of Mummer's Kiss. But what is a mummer? Men, women, and children march in a parade that celebrates fantasy of song, dance, and costume splendor on January 1st in Philadelphia. It has its roots in people who would go from village to village, acting out skits or plays. Swedish immigrants to Philadelphia in the late 17th century brought over the tradition. Philadelphia is a very neighborhood-oriented city, and the neighbors of certain areas would gather around their firehouse and do a lot of reveling before New Year's. That reveling could include lots of gunfire. The mummers would also go into people's houses and make a ruckus, playing with the blinds and demanding soup or alcohol before they left. The parade aspect of the mummers came together in 1860. In 1901, they had their first official Philadelphia Mummers Parade. The city got involved because they were hoping to tone down the parade, and it worked. There's no more gunfire. There's lots of costumes and skits, like their European forebears from the medieval days. And mummers still go into people's houses too for alcohol and or soup. The only difference is that now they only enter homes that have their doors open and want their visit. So why are mummers important to the plot in the Drift? Swanwick proposes that it is one of the few traditions to survive this nuclear apocalypse. It's a way of organizing your community. So instead of governments and churches, there is now the mummers. They are the civic political structure that exists for these communities. And the mummers have some power. They can go into homes and they can even arrest people. We follow the rise of a young man in the mummers organization. Through the stories of this novel, we see glimpses of him as he gains power. The novel spans his life. But then with the next story, we shift to the story of a vampire. Yes, a vampire. We don't know if this has anything to do with mutations in the drift, but there are vampires. In specific, we see two vampires in this novel, a mother and eventually her daughter. They appear to have a hypnotic, almost telepathic attraction to their lovers. One amazing power that they have is they are able to detect how long someone can live based on the contamination that they have from nuclear fallout. They can see the nuclear contamination that a person has. A number of these stories feel like they're ripped right out of the desert stories of Mad Max. We have battles for power in the drift. And we're invested in the characters of the mummer, the mother, and the daughter vampires. Swanwick doesn't hold back. This novel is graphic in its detail. This is an interesting take on a post-apocalyptic, post-nuclear disaster. But that's merely the setting. It is more a story of communities, of relationships, of power struggles, deception, and loyalty. I think there's some interesting ideas here, but I didn't feel like the novel held together very well. I didn't feel that the mosaic or fix-up nature of it really did it any favors. There are moments of very strong prose, and then there's also moments where you have head-scratching plot ideas. You wonder why they are even there. The big one is the rise of the mummers. I really can't see how that would happen. Perhaps somebody who lives in Philadelphia can fill me in on this. So I thought the novel was just okay. I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. So have you read In the Drift? What are your thoughts? Do you like Michael Swanwick as a writer? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, keep reading.